I wanted to introduce myself by telling you a story because I had the pleasure of listening to Dr. Constantino the other day. I don't know how many of you were in the room, but he was the most powerful storyteller, and it reminded me that I have many stories of my own to share, and I thought it was a really great way to connect with him, and it reminded me when I was listening to him that this work is all about relationships. And so it was 20 years ago that I was a classroom teacher, third grade. I found myself at third grade. That's where I landed as my, quote, favorite grade. I had spent 5 years kind of moving around different grade levels, started at high school and taught several intermediate grade levels, but third grade was the place that I found to be home. And one of my students, I'm going to call her Chandra. That is not her real name, but I give her a pseudonym. Chandra was one of my students who struggled with social skills. She spent much of her recess time personifying either a dog or a cat. And in the classroom, you could tell that she had a lot of nervous energy when she was in close proximity to other children and other people, period. And so she was always, I wasn't sure what was going to happen next because she had all this nervous energy. And one day, I was just doing my phonics routines, right? And whiteboards are going and kids are sharing what they know, and this wasn't one of her favorite things to do. And she got frustrated. And she took her desk and shoved it with all her might away from her, and the contents were strewn all about in the middle of my horseshoe classroom that I had arranged. And there was a lot of shock in the classroom. We stood there all looking at each other, and everyone's looking at Shella, Miss Seaton. What is she going to do next, right? And I knew in my mind I had two choices depending on her level of volatility at that moment. I might need to remove the rest of the class, or I was going to see if I could just walk with Chandra to see if she needed another space. And luckily she was willing to just walk with me. And on the way past the intercom, I just rang the office and said, "Can someone please come to my classroom?" They knew to come right away, and they did, luckily, and took my class. And I went into, we had these center pods, and I went into the center pod, got down on my knees. She got tissues for me. I can't believe it. This is 20 years later, right? Get down on my knees, and I said, "I care about you. I know you're struggling right now. Tell me what you need." And then she started crying, because that's all she needed was a moment, right? And she was able to just come back into the classroom. I believe, I can't remember exactly, but I think the other children kind of helped us put her things back together, and she was able to just get right back together. And it was quick, and it was instinctive. The point that I'm trying to make today is that I did not have formal training in how now I'm supposed to engage family in this episode, because this is not something that just happens and then I can't just let it go. I have to engage family in this situation. Luckily, I had a relationship with her grandmother, Chandra, and we spent a lot of time together just talking about how to help her succeed, given her challenges. And there were a lot. I won't go into all of the challenges that she faced. But over that year, her grandmother and I spent time just talking. And her grandmother said to me one day, and I'll never forget it, it's amazing what you hang on to after 20 years. "I don't know what to do. I just don't know what to do, and I don't know that I'm the right person for her. I sometimes wonder if she'd be better off with somebody else." And I just looked at her and I said, "I can't imagine what her life would be like with somebody else." And I remember saying these words, whether they were right or wrong, again, instinct, guts, just happening. And I said, "You are a saint. You are God sent, and you are the person for her. So anyway, that is my heartfelt story as a classroom teacher. Fast forward to that, to my most recent position before I came here to help all of you develop your LCAPs and SIPSAs. I was a school principal, and don't mean to steal the show. We'll get her up here soon to tell stories. And again, no formal training on how to engage families, just instinct. I was driven by a belief that if I am to do the best for my students, I must do it with a healthy partnership with the families of my students. It was just my belief. And so when I came to my school, all of a sudden I had all these teachers, 800 students, and a lot of chaos. And I thought, oh boy, I'm overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed, and one of the first things I noticed was the chaos every morning. And so ironically, this morning on the news, we were hearing about the traffic problems at schools in the Pocket area. Was anyone listening to the news this morning? About just the people that try to volunteer to keep our children safe as they come to school, being yelled at, and just, it's tough. I'm here to acknowledge it is tough. And I remember experiencing the same thing, yet my school was car drop-off, right? Car after car, a dangerous situation. And I thought, my instinct was just to get out there and deal with it, right? And I noticed when I was in front of the school, it was calm, nice and calm. People following my cones, and I thought, so out of not a plan, out of just a reaction, I thought, okay, their kids are happy coming to school, they're calm. There was only one other entrance. I saw probably 80% of the kids come right through that front entrance because it was a drop-off situation. And I started bringing teachers along with me to the front curb, and everyone's saying hello and opening doors, good morning in there, having a short meeting with parents if need be. And I just made it part of my morning routine. And I had to say, there will be no IEPs. All right, from 7:45 to 8:15, none. They do not get scheduled at that time because I have a place to be and I need to be there. It helped so much. It was a little thing. It was not a big plan, and no one told me to do it. I just figured it out based on the context, the troubles that I faced when I first got to that school, and I just figured out what was working. So I'm going to introduce to you now my dear friend, Cathy Morrison, who I met through LCAP work, right? But she has far more experience, right? On the ground experience, I think, than I do in this area, and I'm going to let her share some of her stories to introduce herself.
Who knew LCAP, the magical connector? As Shella said, my name is Cathy Morrison, and I am the new kid on the block here at SCOE. I joined the team in July after having worked at a school district for about 15 years. And my most recent role was as the LCAP and SIPSA coordinator, which required significant stakeholder engagement, not always fun stakeholder engagement. And prior to that, I was in the Family and Community Engagement Office as a parent trainer, offering workshops all around the Title I schools in the city. So I have a story that is brief, but it illustrates how Shella and I actually are a really good team because we bring different skills to the table. In my work organizing parents or communicating with parents, there was one parent I think of quite a bit. Her name is Teresa. She was the DLAC chair, a Spanish speaker, a fierce advocate for students who were English learners. And my first meeting with her was a bomb. I was new in my role. I had been invited to the ELAC at her high school, and I thought I knew LCAP based on the big overview, the district goals. She wanted to know, where is the money going? Where is the money for English learners? And I had to take a pause and say, I will find out and get back to you. So over the years, the relationship grew. I learned that she was adamant to have an interpreter or translator at any meeting, whether it was just with her or for the DLAC. And I decided that I wanted to bring her along as a champion and parent ambassador My husband thought I was crazy one night when I got a text at 7 o'clock and I drove to El Pollo Loco to share the LCAP with her and another parent who had left some other meeting. But I built that relationship and that trust to the point where I understand conversational Spanish, but was using Google Translate to text her one day. She was circulating our LCAP survey. And I said, Teresa, please return the surveys by December 12th in Spanish. And I said, disculpe español mal. Excuse my bad Spanish. And she wrote back a text message that I saved a screenshot because it just warmed my heart. She said, thank you, Cathy, for learning my language. You are breaking down more barriers for me than anyone in the district. And I just consider that to be, a story of listening, understanding her needs, and responding to her. So we are going to move into the workshop now, and thank you for listening to our stories. We kind of want to ground you in this idea about having the beliefs, trust, and establishing relationships.
My students, when I was a teacher, spoke Spanish, Pushtu, Urdu. Without my translations, I would not have been able to do what I do. And my liaisons accompanied me on home visits, which was an activity, a structured activity that gave me the confidence by just doing it to learn to develop these relationships that I later leveraged, like the one I had with Shonda's grandmother. So just thank you. I'm very excited how many of you are in the room. Your role is incredibly critical to this work. And you help teachers build the confidence to have those relationships with their families. Thank you.
Do you want to
Go ahead.
Outline?
You go ahead.
Okay.
My voice off.
Briefly, I think you all had certain expectations coming here. The objectives we want to cover today are, we're going to start with a baseline for understanding California's priority for parent and family engagement. We're going to orient you to the state's Family Engagement Toolkit. Don't open it yet. It's the wire-bound book that's on your table. And then we're going to move into discussing, unpacking some new high-leverage strategies for engaging families and the community. And finally, we heard you, folks who attended the summit last June specifically requested, what are ways that we can connect measuring parent engagement in the school plan, in the LCAP? That's been a challenge, so we worked really hard to come up with some tools that we think will be helpful for you. I wanted to get you talking at your tables, so I think we'll try to move through this quickly, but since this is a workshop on engagement, it's nice to get to know people at your table, maybe in a slightly different way. Many of you are sitting with colleagues, but what I'd like you to do this morning is look in your purse, in your wallet, in your backpack, and find something personal about yourself that you could share with your table. What I'm going to challenge you to do is to go to your phone last. If you have nothing else, use your cell phone. But think of something in your possession that says something special about you. So
I'm pulling out my Zen packet of tea. That says a lot about me. She asked me to find something that would mean something about me. So I carry this with me.
I have a special refillable pen that my dear friend gave me because she knows I like writing and it's refillable. So take a moment and discuss at your table.
Again, I want to share with you my Chilean ID. I'm from Chile. I moved to United States 17 years ago. I'm former teacher, so I have my bachelor degree as a preschool teacher, but also I have 2-year master degree in administration, organization, and education. So all my life in education, I'm happy to be here. As soon as I learn a little bit English, because I had no idea speak English 17 years ago, but now I think I can communicate in both languages, Spanish and English, and happy to be here. Learn every day, right? Thank you.
So I take my backpack wherever I go. I oftentimes, maybe I'm getting older, but I look like a high school student with my backpack on. And in it, I carry a picture of me and my wife. And this was New Year's Eve, and we were stepping into the new year with our firstborn child in Melissa's belly. So, yeah, they're always with me wherever I go. Yeah.
And I'm Scott. I didn't carry anything with me today except keys and a wallet, so I went to the phone, and just as the screensaver on the phone is my family. I have 2 boys, Andrew and Ryan, and my wife Jennifer. And to me, with this work too, reminds me that we need to also stay engaged with our own families, not just the families that we support. So I kind of look at that and think, okay, we need to do it both ways.
So what we're going to go through next is a refresher for some of you, maybe new for those who haven't been to one of these workshops before, but we're going to go over some basics around parent and family engagement. And we pulled this quote from the Global Family Research Project because they have absorbed many of the resources from Harvard's Family Research Project. Because we believe that family engagement is key to student outcomes. We know that's backed up by research. We keep hearing that. And we just want to emphasize more and more that families are key to equitable learning outcomes for students. Now, in our education code, California has made parent and family engagement a priority. And about 80% of states have done the same. We want to make sure that you all understand that we're going to use the word parent frequently, but we use it in a broad sense. We're not excluding aunties, foster parents, grandparents, or other caregivers. So now diving into the standard, if you're working on the LCAP, you probably know that California has 8 priorities for student success. And each of these priorities are measurable through the California School Dashboard. They should be included in your district's LCAP and also in the school plan. What I want to point out now is that there's been a shift from parental involvement to actually changing the term to parent and family engagement. So this is a little trajectory of how the education code has changed since 2013 when the law, local control funding formula, was enacted. Originally, the term was parental involvement. A few years later, it was modified to read parental involvement and family engagement. And then as of this year, it has changed again to parent and family engagement. So we're going to move on, but it's interesting to think about how is the state doing? Are we improving with our terminology? Why do we think they made these changes? So now I'm going to warn you, it's going to get a little technical, but bear with me because we'll get through this. This is just my LCAP side coming out. I do think it's important, though. We're all educators, right? So we should know what the education code says. California Education Code has 2 sections that deal with family and parent engagement, and state priority 3. Part A includes seeking parent input in decision making and promoting participation of parents in programs, especially for what we call high-need students or unduplicated students who are low-income English learners and foster youth. They also have included in education code promoting programs for students with exceptional needs. And if we are aware of how our education system is going, those are students who need most of our support. So Part B in education code defines the conditions that support family engagement. So we'll highlight some clauses here. So those conditions include creating a welcoming environment, having effective two-way communication, and empowering parents. to advocate for equity and access. I know that word empowering really kicks it up a notch. So remember these clauses. We've highlighted them because they will come up later as we talk a little bit more about the tool that districts use around State Priority 3. But I'm not done. One more change.
This is important, subtle but important.
So I've bolded the word treating. This year, the Change to Education Code added the word treating to this clause so that family engagement may include treating parents as partners to influence and create programs that support student needs. So we do want to encourage you to chat a lot today. So just think for a minute, and again, have a little conversation at your table. That's a shift in the definition of the conditions that support effective parent engagement. So what does it mean for you to be treated as a partner? Put yourself in a parent's shoes. Just chat for a minute.
The disadvantage, I said, but they're not. When you have, they're not always. Yeah. So you can't duplicate those services. Okay. So when you're thinking about what does it mean for you to be treated as a partner? You know, you have a child. I know I do too. In high school, you have a child in elementary school. What does that mean?
When I think of partner, I think of like how, if I have a partner, what am I an expert in that I can bring in to the team, as you know? So then I feel like, depending on what each family can bring in, or do, or you know, so it's not going to be the same for everybody.
And as you were talking, I was thinking about being married.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I thought.
I think about, you know, what you were saying is like, you know, as a partner, you have your strengths, I have my strengths.
Yes.
You know what my strengths are. I know what your strengths are, vice versa. So we know how we can essentially work together as partners in this engagement, you know, in this union. So to me, it's like, how are you as a school, if that's what the schools are supposed to be doing, how do you know me? How do you know what strengths that I have that I can bring to the table? And then how are you leveraging them with everyone? And how are you doing that with everybody? That's what I was thinking about as you were talking. So you brought something up.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I can only imagine that every person in this room, I'm going to make the assumption that you are here because you believe in treating parents as partners. So the next overview for you is just to establish a common definition of family engagement. And so we looked through a resource, we adapted it for our use in the workshop today. And what we want to share is we believe family engagement is the process of building relationships with families. And it carries mutual respect. It includes empathy and understanding. And truly effective family engagement means that educators and parents work together to improve student outcomes. So now, we've talked a little bit about research supporting the benefits of family engagement. I think that had I been asked 2 weeks ago, I might have said, oh, of course the benefits of family engagement are things like improved attendance, greater likelihood to graduate high school, fewer behavior incidents. But there's more. There are also relationship-based benefits that aren't as easy to measure. And so what are the benefits for children? I would love a volunteer to read this slide. We have a lot of text on this slide. So would someone like to read this?
Parents and educators want what is best for their student. Ongoing, intentional, and meaningful engagement with families leads to relationships that support student learning and academic growth.
for families. Families feel recognized for their expertise, which sparks their interest in collaborating with educators in support of their child. Promotes safety, trust, caring, and hope that affects the child's learning and academic growth.
For educators, respectful, trusting partnerships with families help educators feel more satisfied with their work and more confident and open in their interactions with families. These partnerships can also make it easier for educators to have conversations involving uncomfortable or challenging issues, such as concerns about learning or behavior.
So think about that first time you have to interact with someone of a different culture or someone who speaks a different language. It can be a little unsettling. So having a good relationship that's built on trust and the belief in every child, it really helps things along. So you all have the Family Engagement Toolkit. This is the overview. We are going to dive into it later, but I wanted to give you an orientation. It's a resource that's been produced by the California Department of Education. It is online. All of the tools are online. They're reproducible. And we find that it is very, very helpful in putting a program together if you need some framework and guidelines. So one of the key concepts in this toolkit is establishing trust. Trusting relationships, we've talked about it this morning at length. It's the foundation of supporting students through parent engagement. And then the relationship piece is examined with an equity lens through this toolkit. So not just building a relationship, but are you reaching everyone? Are you reaching families who don't come to the school, families who may be disenfranchised because of their experience in education, who don't value or trust the school system? So again, we want you to have a quick discussion about your beliefs in engaging families. Are you confident in engaging? And if you had to flip it, if you're at a school site or at a district level, do you think your families feel respected when they come into your space? So let's just take another minute or so. Think about that and talk. So we're going to move a little further into the toolkit, not too far though, but consider this. The responsibility for building these relationships and trust lies with the educators. Parents can fulfill the reciprocal piece of the relationship, but the power dynamic is at the district office or in the classroom. So keep that in mind as we go forward. This is an overview of the sections of the toolkit. As I mentioned, it basically walks you through an entire process from building your family engagement team, establishing a vision, understanding the level of trust with your families, planning activities, how to communicate about them, and something that we often forget, evaluating how you did. Evaluate with vulnerability. Did it work this year? What do we need to tweak for next year? Now, this matrix is an illustration of high leverage versus low leverage family engagement activities. On the bottom axis, we see trusted relationships, while along the side, we see connecting to student learning. So if you look at the bottom left quadrant, this quadrant example is sending messages home through email or newsletters, social media. Honestly, if you examine that, it's a needed communication. Those sort of things are important, but it is weak in building relationships, and it also has really no absolute connection to student learning. You might be notifying families that a testing period is coming up, but it's not intended to support the students. Moving to the right-hand bottom, stronger in the trusted relationships, is when you have tons of families coming to school, attending the spaghetti dinner or buying the gift wrap or selling tamales. Lots of volunteers, great. That's actually opens the door for many people. I know that's how I started. I was an art docent and a carnival volunteer and just got sucked into the whole school vortex. But it doesn't connect to learning, right? Now, if we try to get a little stronger in the connection to student learning, we might see things like family math night or science night, which are helpful to families supporting their child, but it doesn't move to the stronger end of the relationship scale if the school plans it in isolation. If it's strictly planned by the educators and presented to parents in the community, it's not as strong as it could be in relationships. So the upper right is a lofty goal. We may all want to strive for this, but it would include parents in the planning of the activities and having that connection to learning. Again, I always have the philosophy that there's always room to get a little better. Right. So through this toolkit, that is the ultimate. And I want you to keep this matrix in mind as we move forward in the workshop and talk more about high leverage family and community engagement. Now I turn over to Shella.
All right. Okay, so this graphic is simply this illustration of what Cathy was saying about how we have some basic things, and I started reflecting. I reflected an awful lot in putting the presentation together today of my work as a principal and how important there were times when automated calls were essential, especially in emergency situations, or times when my families needed to know something and I needed to get the word out in a timely way. And I asked myself the question, well, I did that in the name of safety, right? But is that also in the name of family engagement? And I answered the question, yes. If I am reaching out to them because their safety is of concern to me, or their child's safety, or we have a purse snatcher in the parking lot, or whatever is happening, I want to let them know. It fills that definition of caring for my families and letting them know what's going on. So we didn't want to send the message today as we talked about this that while they may have low impact, doesn't mean they're not necessary or serve a purpose. So as you're thinking about all of these things and looking at the next resource that I found for you, I want you to keep that in mind. And as I was searching for examples of high leverage, because that's our focus, and knowing that relationships and trust are all basis for that, I came across a resource that's in your packet from actually State of Connecticut, Department of Education. I thought it was really nicely done. It's this document right here. There are 3, so if you were to, unfortunately, when I printed out these documents, it didn't give the source, and they were in PDF, and I was in a hurry, but I'm telling you, they are from the state of Connecticut. I am not proposing to take credit for this work, but I thought that they were very nicely done in terms of showing this progression from low impact to high impact, from an elementary, a secondary, and also they had chronic absenteeism in there as one of the ways of looking at enhancing our engagement with our families. So I'd like to create an activity around this so we can dig into these documents a bit, because I found them to be very, very quality. And so the idea that I have is to have you number by 3s. If you are a 1, you're going to take the elementary one. If you are a 2, you're going to take the secondary one. And if you're a 3, you're going to take the chronic absenteeism one. And so based on the number that you are, dig in, read it, understand it, and then we'll take about 3 to 4 minutes to do that. And while you're looking at it from an individual place, I want you to note 2, maybe 3 high leverage on the right-hand column strategies that you think are worth having a discussion with someone else, bringing back to your school or district, implementing, tweaking, whatever. And then when we transition, you're going to go to a chart, and we'll put a number on each of these charts, 1, 2, or 3. And I'd like you to convene with the other ones in the room to have a conversation about the 2 or 3 that you felt that resonated with you. They thought that they were something that you could maybe utilize, leverage, and use in your context.
Yes.
I liked the example. I think it's workshops for families. I'm not sure where you showcase what academic work levels should look like to parents. I thought that's a really good piece to have, so that the parents can know, even though they've maybe been through high school or but they know when their kid is working at the level that's expected.
So I work with our students are adults, so working with the local districts that our students reside in, so that we are helping our students, which are adults, and their children at the same time to prepare for college.
Can see what it's going to look like going from middle school to high school and preparing the families so that they can support their kids. So it's going to give kids, the premise is 4 weeks of high school prep in the summer. And it's not just working with the students, but also the families. The families can see what it takes for their student to be successful.
I got you. So I think that just sets the stage for engaging families from the beginning when they walk in the door, first grade level in school.
I think it's for a lot of these, like as far as like the essential, like how do you go about transitioning from preschool to elementary, and that transition is really important, especially relationships, and how do you tie it to learning, So for example, the first one, when you have those, like parent-teacher meetings and expectations, how do you go as far as creating, supporting ways of where families are informed of what is expected for them in kindergarten, first grade? And that ties into, if the families feel welcome or included, then they are more prone to attend a lot of the events that are expected of them. Anybody else?
I like number 2 as well. Establishing the two-way relationship with a family through the phone calls, texts, or emails. It's important because, I think Maggie was saying, just like calling home with the negative stuff is not fun for families. So sometimes just giving them a shout out for, hey, you're doing a good job as a parent, and letting them know also that they can call us, at the school with a positive thing too or negative. I think that's important.
I also like number 2. I've had a lot of success with text messages with parents. So sometimes, if I took a picture of their work that they did, or if I took a picture of them doing something nice and I texted it to the parent, they were always more receptive to help me. And so the text messages, I've had a lot of success, and I think we should probably start trying to do that more often. And also, the kids are gone for 6 hours of the day. Parents don't know exactly what's going on at school, but if you can send them a text maybe hour 3 into the day, it has them connected to their child even when they're not around.
I was reading number 9 where it says the school council has a voice. And to me, having a voice, it's not only the student council or the parent council, it's, the parents as a whole, they don't have, sometimes they don't have an idea how much power they have. And if we encourage them to, just come to the meetings and, speak your mind and find out more about, students' education. And if we, persuade them to, attend our meetings and become more involved and, empower them to speak, just come out, just give yourself a try. So
I think everything that was said was good, but one thing that I thought about was I love that it's, parent leaders as part of an attendance team. I'm wondering too if we could have student leaders at the school as well be part of the attendance team, because we're talking about relationships, and a lot of those students have really good relationships with a lot of other students. So I wonder if they could also be part of that team as well.
You were talking about the summer transition. Oh, I'm sorry, Lisette. Should we add that one up here as well? Okay.
Definitely having that opportunity for teachers. Definitely having that opportunity for teachers to connect with families before school starts and start those relationships way before school starts is very important. So when they do get that phone call, they remember, and it's authentic and it's organic versus just trying to make a relationship when something happens.
And I think about that, if this is really going to become a reality, whether it's at a school or district-wide, there really has to be I don't want to say a buy-in, but the belief system has to change. So to me, there needs to be some type of, it could be professional learning on how to do this, but also I think there needs to be some underlying pieces going on in terms of building the belief, or maybe having a paradigm shift to families and chronic absenteeism.
We resonated with quite a few of them. So we actually went down the list of the higher impact on student learning development for elementary schools. And looking at the first one, back to school night class meetings where parents and teachers can share learning strategies, review key skills for students at home when learning tips and develop communication skills. We thought the importance of that was families can know what the expectations are for their students, and also for the parents as well. And then what the expectation of what the schools are for the students. We also looked at number 2, what was the importance of regular two-way calls, texts, emails to share progress and tips. We looked at the importance of positive communications and open dialogue. So not just talking to the parent when something's wrong, but also telling when something is good, when something positive is happening, in order to develop that two-way communication and open dialogue. We also looked at number 3, and that's family centers staffed with workshops and learning. The first thing is that you're developing a true voice, and we thought that was very important, and we actually put the little notation there that we thought that was important in order to create the true voice. Also, family centers for information. We were looking at the family center, so that would be a place where family members can feel comfortable on campus and find out more what's going on at the school site, and see how they can volunteer, how they can help out, get that open dialogue communications going on again between the parents and the educators and the students as well. We thought home visits was very important because of developing open communication. And again, we don't look at that just for the negative sense. We wanted for that to be positive as well. So opening up that communication with the parents or whoever the guardian or the individual is at home that's helping with the student. We also had student staff involvement and parent involvement on campus. And the third and last one, actually number 6, was building capacity for all stakeholders. And so those are our strategies for family engagement and what it would look like at an elementary school.
Thank you very much. Well, give him a round for being the speaker of the. Thank you very much. Okay, so number 2 was secondary.
So we looked a little bit around what it would look like in middle and high school, and we really focused on quite a few of the different areas, in particularly the transition program, the importance of the transition, not just for students, but for families as they're transitioning between middle and high school, and how parents and students can prepare for that. You can look at our information, but we kind of just talked about a bunch of stuff. So essentially, we really believe that transitioning was really important, and it's important that you educate both your families and students as they are making that leap from middle school to high school, including what kind of credits are needed in order to be successful, how to be prepared in the different grade levels, and really what parents might be needing to expect as they move their students into high school. In addition, we talked about workshops for families and the importance of all different kinds of workshops for families that help to engage our families, including opportunities for them to build their leadership. We had a conversation around the importance of providing them with information about credits and college to career opportunities, as well as what their students need to be successful. But through that, it would allow them an opportunity to be participants on a variety of different school site teams or CTE groups or groups in which they could share their voice and how they could be supporting their students and how they could be engaging more parents and involve them as well. We also talked about college and career planning. As you can see, it's all about college and career in our middle and high school areas. Same thing, opportunities to engage our families more deeply in college tours, in ways in which they could learn more about what opportunities are available for their students. And also, we talked a lot about one example of our colleagues was sharing about how she's been doing a lot of really deliberate outreach in engaging parents on every school site committee that she has on campus, and really making sure that there's parent representation on all of those committees in an effort to build that leadership locally. And as a result, what's happening is parents are feeling more empowered and more comfortable, and they're sharing more of what it is that they'd like to see as far as topics for information sharing, how to engage community members to share that information with them, and really helping to create that safe space and environment for parents to really be listened and heard, which as a result creates empowerment, leadership, and opportunity for further engagement.
Thank you. Give that a hand. That is so on spot, as I'm going to pick up the mic here in a minute and talk about building the capacity of our. Okay, and number 3 was focused on chronic absenteeism.
So we were able to take a lot from what we read, and I was honest with the group about being a little overwhelmed with this new position for this year, that we got to a school and this was the problem, and we're like, we don't really know how to help. But now I can go and be like, these are the ideas that we came up with and we were able to put in practice with this school. We talked about the summer transition meetings being held before they start. That way teachers meet the families, and then when they do need to make those calls home, they feel more authentic. The parent leaders as part of an attendance team, we also talked about the nurse being part of that attendance team, really building the community, making those relationships. And then we had a great idea of student leaders on the team as well, being accountable with the absences. Also, home visits to discuss hopes and dreams. We talked a little bit also, I'm going to go down here, but revamping the attendance letter. When they get those, they can kind of be a little scary. So focusing on the positive first, and then we can kind of, this is how many days you've had, absent, but really focusing on the positive first. Also, professional learning, finding a way how we can be trained to, if we need to make those calls home, or just kind of knowing, building skills, knowledge about the chronic absentees to help with the, even when this wasn't on the high impact, but we thought it was a really good, giving the positive good news phone calls. They were here today. That's really great. We hope to see them for the rest of the week. That was something that, we thought was really good to put in practice. Also, kind of a little bit with the professional learning, making the staff as mentors for the ongoing two-way communication for those students.
Okay, give Vanessa a big hand. How many days on the job?
Just since August.
Okay, and they gave her the mic. I mean, who was that team? I was like, thank you, Vanessa. So I did this graphic too because I just kept seeing it being cyclical, right? If we're going to have trust, we've got to have these beliefs. And sometimes it's hard to shift beliefs without just jumping in and doing. I think it's I'm not a psychologist, but isn't cognitive behavior therapy based on the fact that if we just get in and we get the feeling of greeting our families in the front of the school every day with a smile on our face, because I've asked them to do that, and shake hands with parents and welcome the kids, that after a while, guess what? The families then start to say, they're being kind to me today, and they're not just walking with their eyes down at the pavement walking past because they've got more important things to do. There's a two-way learning process going on. The staff are building confidence and an understanding that, my behavior impacts the reactions that I get, and it's two ways. So when you're thinking about these little steps you're taking, realize that sometimes you can get your staff or those who are working on professional development to take little baby steps. And they're okay with doing that. I'll be happy to greet them in the morning. It's a fun time out there, sun shining, maybe not on a rainy day, but usually we had fun on morning duty, right? Slowly but surely we began to shift a culture of a school site to a place where we want them to come on campus and be with us every day. And it's a partnership, but I'm just kind of sharing personal stories about, basically my point with this slide is, this one and the one before it, was no matter how many parent-teacher conferences we have, curriculum nights, activities, this and that, and I wrote it down, I should probably read my notes. No amount of teacher-parent conferences, curriculum nights, or other activities will have the intended impact of building positive relationships if the staff, and I was thinking about staff, are not engaging in respectful dialogue and listening to understand our families in every moment. So it's not about the activity, it's about the interaction that happens while you're at the activity or engaged in the activity that determines its success. But page 52 is a tool about kind of measuring where you are, right? Because don't just jump in and start doing some activities. Step back for a moment and go, okay, where are we? And there's two really key questions on that page that I want you to have in conversation with your table group. One, how welcome do families feel at your school? And are there differences between the groups of families, either by grade level or whatever differences you might find? Have that conversation at your table. We'll take about 2 minutes to do that. So I would love for 2 or 3 people to share out to the larger group, because this is a really rich conversation we're hearing at each individual table. Is there someone who would like to share their thought with the broader group?
I'm noticing, or going to start really focusing on, because I'm district-wide, is every school I go to, what does their signage look like in front of their school? I liked the idea from last Friday of, are you a guest or are you a visitor? So making sure that you're a guest in our house instead of a visitor will hopefully make that shift for families. And then the differences between groups, the families that are receiving attendance letters and poor grade reports or parent conferences because of behavior don't often feel comfortable coming onto campus, because a teacher will say something negative in person as it is their expectation, since they only hear from us about the negative. So shifting to the positive comments will hopefully make them, or positive calls and interactions, will make them feel more welcome coming onto campus, that they'll get something positive said about their family.
Thanks. Anyone else like to share?
Varying the diversity of who's presenting the parent meetings to make sure that you're including all groups. And then Ugo talked about how they're redesigning their district office in Woodland to make it more welcoming and making a parent center, so that it's just a more welcoming environment and less sterile.
Very good. I like the focus on the district office, because it matters, yeah. Any other comments? Over here.
We had conducted school site climate surveys a while back, and based on some of that feedback, we actually changed all of our forms that families fill out. They all said mother, father, and that doesn't necessarily reflect how our families look. So all of our forms now say parent/guardian 1, parent/guardian 2.
Subtle things, huh? Little things matter. Other comments? Thank you for that. So let's go through the next 2 slides, and these are not a lot of activity, but just a message. And this one is just to remind us, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir in this group, that the first bullet is talking about, we have a lot of statutorily driven requirements for involving parents. And this may not interest all parents. The second bullet is where I found my confidence in doing this work. So these 2 points, when I thought deeply about what are the 2 biggest leverage things, I wanted you to walk away feeling like, I can hear you starting to get ideas, but if I were going to do two things, I put the top one at the top because it's about building the capacity of, and I had put their staff before, but it's not, it's about building the capacity of your families, of your parent leaders, of your own staff to engage in this work effectively. And then the number 2 highest leverage strategy is assess where you are and do something. Get started today, right? Just get moving in the right direction. I mean, I tried to distill it into the 2 biggest things that I felt like if you walked out the door, here's what I'm going to do. So we have in the packet a couple of things to help us with the second.
Look out when you're back in your office. These are resources that we pulled from the Family Engagement Toolkit. The yellow page is a sample family engagement survey. You could modify it to your local context. The survey is actually quite a bit longer. It has demographic questions and things like that that you might want to gather. And the pink handout is a little checklist you may use to see how welcoming your school site is. And are you already doing this? Could you add it? Or something that might be hard. It'll give you a good baseline for where you want to focus and move forward. And again, don't beat yourself up because, you know, checking all of the top responses is not going to happen to anyone probably in the whole state of California right off the bat, but we always have room to grow.
Yeah.
So those will be also linked after the workshop. You'll have all these materials sent to you by email.
So this slide is a lot of credit given to 3 different places. One of the things that Cathy and I spend an awful lot of time doing in our work is measuring the effectiveness, helping our districts study the effectiveness of the actions that they're putting into place. And the conversation of metrics for school plans and the district LCAP is part of our ongoing work, right? And there are some that metrics are just very straightforward, right? Black and white metrics. Measuring family engagement is not an easy one, right? And we've seen it range from measuring the number of parents who show up at some event to the number of hits on the website. You know, there's all kinds of creative things that we're seeing in our plans, and so we decided to pull from 3 resources and then generate a document. This is our best effort. We pulled from 3 in particular documents, and they're credited here. They're also credited here to leave you with not the end-all, be-all metrics that might be helpful in measuring your school plan, but we felt like you should walk away with something to get you started. The benefit of measuring priority 3, which is family and community engagement, is there's a lot of flexibility. This is one of the local indicators, right? We are required to have some metrics in our district plans, in our school plans. And so we decided to really take a look too at what's going on with this self-reflection tool in the dashboard, compare it against this document that was out several years ago that we worked some of borrowed from it, and we also pulled from the toolkit that you have on your table. So these 3 kind of informed the metrics that we put into this document here. Raise of hands. I'm curious how many of you are familiar with the self-reflection tool in the dashboard for priority 3? Just curious. Okay, so it's worth your while to look at it. So we're going to do that next, okay? There is an expectation that districts collect information, whether it be through survey or whatever means they're doing, to measure their community on these three elements. You'll note that those 3 elements are also the categories on this document that we built for you, okay? And so what we'd like you to do is, you're not going to get out of your seats, but we're going to go back to that 1, 2, 3 number again. so that we can do a little jigsaw reading of this document, just because I think it's important for you to know what's in here, in your role, knowing that when your community goes to the dashboard, they're looking at some ratings. If you haven't been in the dashboard for your district, it's always an interesting thing to go in and see what's going on there in terms of how your district is responding to these and communicating back out to the public on how they believe they are doing around LCFF Priority 3. You, by the way, are the experts to help inform the district and draft what some of those, how they are reported in the dashboard. That's what I believe. Whether or not you're given that opportunity, I don't know, but I believe that those who are doing the work are the ones, the experts to help with that. So, ones, read, so you're going to be looking at this one. You did? Okay. Relationships. Turn to page 2 and 3. It's only a 3-page survey. What I want you to do is just scan the 4 or 5 points. I think there's 4 points in each category. If you're a 1, you're going to look at relationships, 2, partnerships, 3, seeking input. Get them in your head, so it shouldn't take more than about 30 seconds. Then I want you to tell those at your table, and you can partner up with your other one, so you're not, take a turn. Tell the others at the table what's in this survey and what's being measured at a district level, in the dashboard, outward facing. Go. So go ahead and ones, share out at your table. What are they measuring in the dashboard at a district level around building relationships? Go ahead.
Staff training, all staff, so not just the teachers, but administrators, everyone, on how they're able to build trusting relationships. The next area talked about environments, as the environment friendly for and welcoming for all people to come to the school. And then it's also the next area they talked about is ways to learn about the school community's cultures and values and things like that. And then the last piece is just two-way communication in a language that every person could receive.
So with regard to parent leadership, so building the capacity of and supporting principals and staff to effectively engage families in advisory groups and with decision making. So as mentioned before, all those site councils that we have, district councils, how do we engage families and ensure that they're part of the decision making. And then building the capacity of and supporting family members to effectively engage in advisory groups and decision making. So again, this is really them being a part of the decision making process and not just the school site and or the districts. Also focused on policies and programs and implementing strategies to reach and seek input from underrepresented groups in the school community. So how are we reaching everyone and getting their input? And then providing opportunities to have families, teachers, principals, and district administrators, so all stakeholders, to work together to plan, design, implement, and evaluate family engagement activities at school and district levels.
So did you notice anything interesting in terms of a theme across all 3? I'm giving you a hint. Did you see a theme across all 3 categories? Yeah, rating the LEA's progress. Yes, it's a self-reflection tool. Not the theme was looking. No, it's okay. The theme of building capacity of the staff is in every single area. We have stressed that today, and so I just wanted to point it out. So when I designed some metrics over here in the various categories, you're going to see my effort. And by the way, you can rewrite these if you wish, or reword them, or do with them what you like. But I was trying very hard to come at developing metrics that could get at how are we doing with that, and how are we doing in terms of staff's confidence in doing this work. So efficacy, understanding the efficacy levels of your staff. So these metrics are in the far left-hand corner of this resource for you. Across, as you read across, just to orient you how to use this tool as we wrap up today, it kind of gives you a description of what might you look like if you're kind of emerging in those areas, getting better at it, and now you're completely expert at this, right? So you can gauge where you might be as you go across the continuum. You'll notice that many of the metrics that are there are measured in a percentage or a number, because we want to be able to monitor some piece of data over time. And to final, we have left a resource. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the school plan, right? And what we're talking about when we say, we're not going to do a whole lot of work here, but when we talk about a metric for measuring progress, you'll see in the SIPSA, and we've left the 4-page copy of the template there for those of you who are not necessarily familiar with it. They don't get posted a lot or out there a lot. The LCAP is now, and they also have metrics. But essentially, the school, the principal, the team, the leadership, the parents are working together to build actions. They have a goal, they have all these actions, but what are we doing to measure our progress? So they'll pick some metrics, and then they'll pick a baseline. Where are we now, based on a survey, based on a measure, and then they'll do some kind of a target for where we hope to be next year. And they'll come back and measure that. It's an annual process. So I'm sharing this with you because I wanted to orient you to what I meant by a metric and where they go. They go in the school plan, they go in the LCAP. You'll see that same kind of format. This year, the LCAP is a new 3-year plan. So you'll see a baseline, and then you're going to see a 3-year target. Not the ones that are posted right now, but the ones that get posted in the summer of 2020 will be a brand new 3-year plan. And so this is leaving you with this. This is an important year for district planning. Very important year for district planning. So I'm going to segue to Cathy, because you were going to finish up with one little piece.
Yes. So on the metrics, please don't use all of them in your LCAP. Select the ones that reflect your need. What's local, what's in your context. But will you click me forward, please?
Yes, yes.
So we're ready to close, okay? And I just want to leave you with an optimistic thought and a thank you and appreciation. We've done a lot of discussion today and interaction, and don't have time to go to each one of you to express gratitude, but just know that we appreciate how you really dug in today and expanded your thinking about parent and family engagement. Finally, I wanted to leave you with just the charge to think about something that you learned today that you will take with you, that you will implement, suggest to your team back at your school site or the district office, and follow up with us. Let us know how it went. We would love to stay in touch with you, and we look forward to working with you more in the future.
Thanks.